My parents always treated me like the problem child, but when I found my mother's secret diary, I realized they were hiding the truth about my childhood. Yul, this one's heavy. I spent my entire life thinking I was the problem, the one who messed up everything. Turns out I was just the scapegoat. If you're into crazy family drama like this, make sure to subscribe for more stories because this one's a ride. Okay, so here's how it all started. Growing up, I was always the problem child. Every single thing that went wrong in our house was somehow my fault. If my younger brother broke something, I didn't watch him properly. If my older sister failed a test, I distracted her. If my mom was having a bad day, it was because I didn't clean my room. I could never win. Meanwhile, my siblings were treated like royalty. My sister was the golden child who could do no wrong, and my brother was the baby of the family. So, of course, he was spoiled rotten. I got the hand-me-downs, the blame, and the lectures about how I needed to get my act together. I honestly started to believe it. Like, maybe I was the problem. Maybe there was something wrong with me. Fast forward to a few months ago. My parents asked me to help clean out the attic because they were finally downsizing. I was reluctant at first because, well, spending time with them isn't exactly my idea of fun. But I went anyway, figuring it was the least I could do. We're up there, going through boxes of old junk, Christmas decorations, baby clothes, random stuff they hadn't touched in years. My mom gets a phone call and steps outside, leaving me to sort through a pile of stuff she told me to throw out. That's when I saw it. Buried under a bunch of old photo albums and dusty papers was this leather-bound book. At first, I thought it was just another one of those scrapbooks my mom used to obsess over, but when I opened it, I realized it was her diary. Now, I know what you're thinking. Invading someone's privacy is wrong. Trust me, I get it. But something about this diary felt important. Like if there was ever a time I was going to understand why my family treated me the way they did, this was it. So yeah, I opened it. The first few entries were pretty standard. Stuff about my mom's day, her grocery lists, how she felt about her job. But then I hit an entry from when I was about 5 years old. It said, "Sometimes I feel like I'm failing as a mother. My name is so difficult. She cries over everything, and I just don't have the patience. I try so hard to love her, but it's exhausting." That one stung. I mean, I know I was a sensitive kid, but seeing it written out like that, it hurt. But what came next was even worse. There was another entry from a few years later that said, "It's easier to blame my name when things go wrong. She's so emotional that it distracts everyone from what's really going on. I know it's not fair, but I don't know what else to do." Yul, I had to stop reading for a minute. She knew she was blaming me unfairly. She knew she was making me the scapegoat, and she did it on purpose. But it didn't stop there. As I kept reading, it became clear that my parents weren't just picking on me. They were hiding something. There were entries about my dad losing money on bad investments, about my mom feeling trapped in the marriage, and about how they were constantly fighting. One entry straight up said, "I hate that the kids have to see us like this. I know it's damaging, but I don't know how to fix it. Blaming my name is the only way to keep the peace. If she takes the blame, at least the other two don't have to deal with this." I couldn't believe what I was reading. My entire childhood, I thought I was the problem. But the truth is, my parents were a mess, and they used me as a shield to protect themselves and my siblings from their own issues. The final straw was an entry from when I was about 16. It said, "Sometimes I wonder if my name even knows how much we rely on her to hold everything together. She's strong in her own way, even if she doesn't see it. I feel guilty for how much we put on her shoulders, but at this point, it's too late to change things." Too late to change things? Are you kidding me? They built their entire family dynamic around me being the scapegoat, and then just decided it was too late to fix it. I put the diary back in the box and left the attic. My mom asked if everything was okay, and I just said I wasn't feeling well. I couldn't even look her in the eye. Since then, I've been trying to process everything. On one hand, it's a relief to know that I wasn't crazy, that it wasn't my fault. But on the other hand, it's infuriating to think about all the years I spent blaming myself for something that was never my responsibility. I haven't confronted my parents about the diary yet. Part of me wants to scream at them for what they did, but another part of me feels like it won't change anything. They'll just deny it or brush it off like they always do. So yeah, that's where I'm at. I don't know if I'll ever fully forgive them, but at least now I know the truth. TLDR, my parents always blamed me for everything growing up. But when I found my mom's secret diary, I realized they were using me as a scapegoat to cover up their own problems. After finding that diary, I couldn't sleep for days. Every time I closed my eyes, the words just kept playing over and over in my head. Blaming my name is the only way to keep the peace. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the fact that they knew what they were doing and still chose to do it. They built this entire narrative that I was the problem child, all so they wouldn't have to deal with their own failures. I started thinking back to all the times I was punished or singled out. Like there was this one time when I was 10. My brother, the golden boy, accidentally knocked over a vase in the living room while we were playing. My mom walked in, saw the mess, and immediately screamed at me, "Why can't you just behave for once? You're always causing trouble." My brother just stood there, and I took the blame. I cried in my room for hours, thinking, why am I like this? Why can't I just be better? Turns out, it wasn't about me at all. Or the time in high school when my sister came home past curfew after a party. My mom decided it was somehow my fault because I hadn't reminded her to set a good example. What? I wasn't even teat the party. But no, I got grounded for 2 weeks, while my sister got a stern lecture and a pat on the head. I let it go at the time because I thought, maybe I really should have done more. But now? Now I know it was just easier for them to blame me than deal with my sister's actions. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. It wasn't just about the blame, it was about how that blame shaped me. I grew up thinking I had to be perfect to earn their approval. I became a people pleaser, constantly bending over backward to make others happy, even at my own expense. Every time I made a mistake, no matter how small, I'd spiral into this pit of self-loathing because I believed their lies. I believed I was the problem. After a few days of stewing, I decided I needed answers. I couldn't just sit with this information and pretend everything was fine. So I called my mom and told her I wanted to talk. She sounded cheerful, as if nothing was wrong, and invited me over for dinner. When I got there, it was like stepping into a time machine. The same old house, the same smell of pot roast, the same nagging feeling in the back of my mind that I didn't belong. My dad was in his recliner watching TV, and my mom was setting the table. I sat down and said, "We need to talk about something." She looked at me, a little confused, but said, "Sure, what's on your mind?" I took a deep breath and said, "I found your diary while we were cleaning the attic." Her face froze. For a second, I thought she was going to deny it or blow up at me for snooping. But instead, she just said, "Oh." Not an apology, not an explanation, just "oh." I pressed on. "I read some of it. I know you blamed me for things to keep the peace. I know you used me as a scapegoat so you wouldn't have to deal with your own issues. Why? Why would you do that to me?" She sat down, sighed, and said, "It's complicated." Complicated? That's what she was going with? I said, "No, it's not complicated. You made me believe I was the problem my entire life, and it wasn't true. Do you have any idea what that did to me?" At this point, my dad finally looked up from the TV and said, "What's all this about?" I turned to him and said, "Did you know? Did you know she was doing this?" He just looked confused and mumbled something about not wanting to get involved. Not wanting to get involved. That was his excuse. He let it happen because it was easier for him to look the other way. My mom finally said, "I never meant to hurt you. I didn't know what else to do. You were always so emotional, and I thought you could handle it better than your siblings." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Handle it better? I was a child. It wasn't my job to handle anything. You were the adults. You should have handled your own problems. She started crying, saying she felt guilty, but didn't know how to fix it. She said, "I thought you'd grow out of it, that you'd see how strong you are and understand why we did what we did." At that point, I was done. I stood up and said, "I am strong, but not because of you. I'm strong because I had to be, because you made me believe I had no other choice. I'm done carrying this family's baggage." I walked out, and I haven't spoken to them since. I'm still processing everything, how to move forward, how to heal. But one thing I know for sure, I'm not the problem. I never was. TLDR, my parents treated me like the problem child my whole life, but after finding my mom's diary, I realized they were using me as a scapegoat to avoid dealing with their own issues. When I confronted them, they admitted it but tried to justify their actions. I'm done with their excuses.